The morning sun peeked through the stained glass windows of St. Maria's convent, casting colorful patterns across the worn wooden floor. Sister Cecilia Martinez smoothed her habit and winced slightly as her fingers protested the movement. At 78, her body reminded her daily of its age, but her spirit remained as vibrant as it had been when she first walked through these doors 6 decades ago. The bell for morning prayer chimed, its familiar sound echoing through the stone corridors. Sister Cecilia made her way slowly toward the chapel, nodding warmly to the younger nuns who passed her with respectful smiles. They called her the heart of the convent behind her back, not that she knew this. To her, she was simply doing what she had always done, serving God through small, everyday acts of kindness. The convent sat nestled in the rolling hills of northern Italy, surrounded by olive groves and vineyards. Little had changed in the centuries since it was built, though time had left its mark on the aging building just as it had on Sister Cecilia. The plaster walls showed cracks here and there, and the roof leaked during heavy rains. But it was home, the only home Sister Cecilia had known for most of her life. "Good morning, sister," called out Sister Teresa, the youngest nun at just 24. Her eyes sparkled with energy that reminded Cecilia of herself many years ago. "Did you sleep well?" "As well as these old bones allow," Sister Cecilia replied with a gentle laugh. "And you, child?" "I had the strangest dream about music," Sister Teresa said, falling into step beside her. "It made me wonder. I've never heard anyone play that old piano in the common room." "Do you play, Sister Cecilia?" Something flickered across the elderly nun's face, a shadow so brief that Teresa almost missed it. "That was a lifetime ago," Sister Cecilia said softly. She patted Teresa's hand and changed the subject. "We should hurry. Mother Superior dislikes tardiness even from old women like me." What Sister Cecilia didn't say, what she never spoke of, was how her fingers still remembered the feel of ivory keys beneath them. How sometimes when the convent was quiet and she was alone, her hands would move through the air, playing silent symphonies only she could hear. Before she became Sister Cecilia, she had been Lucia Martinez, daughter of a baker and his wife in a small village near Florence. Lucia had shown remarkable talent at the piano from the age of 5, when she would climb onto the bench of the dusty upright piano in the village church and pick out melodies she had heard just once. By 12, she was playing Chopin and Beethoven. By 16, she had been offered a scholarship to study at a prestigious music academy in Rome. But God, it seemed, had other plans for her gifts. After morning prayer, the nuns gathered in the dining hall for a simple breakfast of bread, cheese, and fruit. Sister Cecilia sat at her usual place near the window, where she could look out at the garden she tended with such care. The lavender was blooming now, its purple flowers swaying in the gentle breeze. "Sisters," Mother Superior announced, standing at the head of the long wooden table, "Bishop Fontana will be visiting us next week to discuss the renovation fund." Murmurs of excitement rippled through the room. The convent desperately needed repairs, and the diocese had finally approved funding after years of requests. "This is wonderful news," said Sister Maria, who managed the convent's meager finances. "Which areas will be addressed first?" Mother Superior, a stern woman in her 60s with practical sensibilities, unfolded a piece of paper. "The roof, certainly. The east wall needs reinforcement, and we'll be making better use of some spaces." Her eyes drifted to Sister Cecilia. "The common room will be converted to a proper meeting area. That means the old piano will need to go." Sister Cecilia's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Around her, the conversation continued, talk of paint colors and tile choices, but she heard none of it. The piano would need to go. The words echoed in her mind like a bell tolling. It wasn't that she played it anymore. Her arthritis made that nearly impossible now. The once nimble fingers that had danced across keyboards were swollen at the joints, sometimes curling inward against her will. But knowing the piano was there, just there across the hall, had always brought her comfort. "Sister Cecilia," Mother Superior's voice broke through her thoughts. "You're very quiet. Do you have any concerns about the renovations?" All eyes turned to her. Sister Cecilia set down her spoon and smiled the serene smile she had perfected over decades of hiding her feelings. "No concerns, Mother. Changes are necessary and the repairs have been needed for so long. It will be good for the convent." Later that morning, while the others were busy with their duties, Sister Cecilia slipped into the common room. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that streamed through the tall windows. In the corner sat the piano, an upright Bechstein that had been donated to the convent nearly 40 years ago by a wealthy patron. Its dark wood was dulled with age, and a few of its keys had yellowed, but to Sister Cecilia it remained beautiful. She approached it slowly, her hand reaching out to touch the closed lid. Memories flooded back. Her father's calloused baker's hands lifting her onto the piano bench when she was too small to climb up herself. Her mother weeping with joy the first time Lucia played a complicated piece perfectly. The music teacher in the village saying, "This child has been touched by God." Touched by God. Yes, she had believed that too, but not in the way they meant. Sister Cecilia opened the lid carefully and stared at the keys. Without thinking, she sat down on the bench, her body remembering the correct posture despite the years. Her fingers hovered above the ivory, trembling slightly. From emotion or arthritis, she couldn't tell. She pressed one key, middle C, and the note rang out in the empty room. Imperfect, slightly out of tune, but still clear. Sister Cecilia closed her eyes. "I thought I might find you here." Mother Superior stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Sister Cecilia quickly stood, embarrassed to be caught like a child with her hand in the cookie jar. "I was just saying goodbye," she explained, closing the piano lid gently. Mother Superior crossed the room and stood beside her, looking down at the instrument. "You never told anyone you could play. It didn't seem important, was it? Important to you, I mean." Sister Cecilia hesitated, then decided that after 60 years of service, she owed herself at least this small honesty. "Yes, very much so." Mother Superior nodded slowly. "The bishop believes we should focus on necessities, not luxuries. Music is a distraction from prayer, he says." "And what do you believe, Mother?" Sister Cecilia asked quietly. A flicker of something, rebellion perhaps, crossed the younger woman's face before she composed herself. "I believe in obedience, sister. As do you." That evening, after Vespers, Sister Cecilia knelt beside her narrow bed in the small cell that had been her private space for decades. The walls were bare except for a simple wooden cross. A small desk held her Bible and prayer book. A chest contained her few personal belongings, letters from her long-deceased parents, a rosary she had been given at her first communion, and hidden beneath some folded habits, a faded program from a piano recital she had given at age 16, her last recital. Sister Cecilia opened her prayer book, but instead of reading, she found herself listening to the music in her head, Debussy's Clair de Lune, which had always brought her closer to God than any prayer. "Lord," she whispered into the quiet room, "I have never questioned your path for me. I have served faithfully. I have loved this life you chose for me." She paused, her throat tight. "But must I lose this last connection to the gift you gave me?" No answer came, of course. Just the distant sound of crickets in the garden and the creaking of the old building settling for the night. Sister Cecilia closed her eyes, her fingers moving slightly in her lap, playing the piece she had never forgotten. She had made her choice long ago, when she'd turned away from a promising career as a concert pianist to follow her spiritual calling. She had never regretted it, not really. Music had been her first language, but silence had taught her even more. She would accept this change as she had accepted all others in her long life, with grace and faith that God's plan was greater than her understanding. The next morning, Sister Cecilia rose before dawn. She moved quietly through the sleeping convent to the chapel, where she lit a single candle and knelt in prayer. As the first light of day began to glow through the windows, she made a decision. She would let go of the piano without complaint. She would support the renovations with genuine enthusiasm. She would continue to serve God and her sisters with all the love in her heart. But first, just once more, she would play. Sister Cecilia waited until the hour when she knew everyone would be busy. Mother Superior meeting with the contractor, Sister Maria working on the accounts, the younger nuns tending the garden or studying. Then she made her way to the common room and closed the door behind her. The piano waited, patient as an old friend. Sister Cecilia sat down, opened the lid, and placed her gnarled hands on the keys. Pain shot through her fingers as she pressed down, but she pushed through it. The notes were hesitant at first, some missed or fumbled as her stiff joints protested, but slowly, like water finding its way through stones, the music began to flow. She played softly, a Bach prelude that had once been as natural to her as breathing. Her body remembered what her conscious mind had tried to forget, and as she played, tears slid down her wrinkled cheeks, not from sadness, but from the pure joy of reconnection with a part of herself she had set aside but never truly abandoned. Sister Cecilia didn't know that just outside the door, Sister Teresa stood listening, her young face filled with wonder at the unexpected beauty flowing from within. Nor did she know that this moment, this private farewell to her first love, was merely the prelude to an extraordinary chapter in her life that was about to begin. A sleek, black car crawled up the winding road to St. Maria's convent, looking oddly out of place against the ancient stone buildings and rolling green hills. Sister Teresa spotted it first from the garden where she was harvesting tomatoes for the evening meal. "Someone's coming," she called to Sister Maria, who was pinning sheets to the clothesline nearby. The car stopped in the small gravel area that served as the convent's parking lot. A tall man stepped out, his city clothes marking him immediately as an outsider. He stretched, looking up at the convent with appreciative eyes, then reached back into the car for an expensive-looking camera bag. Sister Maria wiped her hands on her apron. "I'll tell Mother Superior. Keep working, Teresa." But Sister Teresa, young and curious, kept watching as the stranger slung his camera bag over his shoulder and made his way toward the main entrance. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place it. Inside, Sister Cecilia was dusting the wooden shelves in the library, a task that suited her these days. Her arthritis made many chores difficult, but she could still manage the gentle, unhurried work of keeping books clean. The library was her favorite place in the convent now that she avoided the common room and its soon-to-be-removed piano. She heard voices in the hallway, Mother Superior's crisp tones and a man's voice, deep and warm, with the slight musical lilt of a northern Italian accent. Sister Cecilia didn't turn when the library door opened. "And this is our library," Mother Superior was saying. "Small, but with some remarkable volumes dating back to the 16th century. Beautiful," the man replied. "The light in here is perfect." Something about his voice made Sister Cecilia turn around. The dust cloth in her hand froze mid-motion as she stared at the visitor. She knew that face, not personally but from newspapers and magazines. Mother Superior noticed her surprise. "Sister Cecilia, this is Mr. Alessandro Romano. He's a photographer and musician working on a documentary about historic religious buildings in Italy. The bishop approved his request to include our convent." Alessandro Romano stepped forward, his hand extended before he remembered that not all nuns shook hands with strangers. He awkwardly converted the gesture into a respectful nod. "It's an honor to meet you, sister." Sister Cecilia nodded back, finding her voice. "Welcome to St. Maria's, Mr. Romano. Alessandro, please." His eyes crinkled when he smiled, revealing a man probably in his mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and an easy manner that put people at ease. "I hope I'm not disturbing your work." "Not at all," she replied, setting down her dustcloth. "These books have waited centuries to be read. They can wait another hour to be dusted." Mother Superior checked her watch. "I have a call with the diocese in 5 minutes. Sister Cecilia, perhaps you could show Mr. Romano around while I'm occupied. He's particularly interested in the chapel and its architecture." Before Sister Cecilia could respond, Mother Superior was gone, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Left alone with the famous visitor, Sister Cecilia felt oddly self-conscious, a feeling she hadn't experienced in decades. "Shall we start with the chapel, then?" she asked. Alessandro nodded, but his eyes had caught on her hands. "If you don't mind me asking, sister." "Your hands." Sister Cecilia looked down at her gnarled fingers, the knuckles swollen from arthritis. "Age comes for us all, Mr. Romano." "No, that's not what I meant," he said quickly. "Your hands, they're a pianist's hands." Sister Cecilia felt a jolt of surprise. No one had noticed that in years. No one had looked closely enough. Once, she admitted. A very long time ago. Alessandro's eyes lit up with interest. "I thought so. I've studied the hands of pianists my whole life. There's something distinctive about them, not just the shape but how they move." He smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry if I'm being too personal. Professional curiosity. You see, before I became a photographer, I was a concert pianist." Now it was Sister Cecilia's turn to look surprised. "You're that Alessandro Romano? The one who played with the Vienna Philharmonic?" His eyebrows shot up. "You know my work?" Sister Cecilia felt heat rise to her cheeks. We may be separated from the world, Mr. Romano, but we're not completely cut off. Sister Maria listens to classical radio while she does the accounts. I've heard your recordings. A look of genuine pleasure crossed his face. And what did you think? Your Bach is exceptional, she said honestly. Your touch has both technical precision and emotional depth. Not all pianists achieve that balance. Alessandro stared at her with new interest. That's exactly what my old teacher used to say. You clearly know music well. Sister Cecilia turned toward the door, suddenly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. The chapel is this way, Mr. Romano. As they walked through the ancient corridors, Alessandro asked questions about the building's history, its architectural features, the daily life of the nuns. Sister Cecilia answered everything with the knowledge that came from 6 decades of living within these walls. She found herself enjoying his company, his sharp mind, his artist's eye that noticed details others missed, his respectful curiosity. In the chapel, he set up his camera on a tripod, moving around to capture the play of light through the stained glass windows. This building tells such a story, he said, adjusting his lens. The stones themselves seem to have absorbed 6 centuries of prayers. They have, Sister Cecilia said softly. That's why I've never felt alone here, even in the quietest moments. Alessandro lowered his camera and looked at her thoughtfully. May I ask why you stopped playing? The piano, I mean. Sister Cecilia was silent for a long moment. I didn't stop, she finally said. I chose a different kind of music. He nodded as if he understood, though she wasn't sure anyone could who hadn't made a similar choice. There's a piano in the common room, she added, though not for much longer. It's being removed next week for renovations, and may I see it? Sister Cecilia hesitated, then nodded. She led him to the common room, which was empty at this hour. The piano sat in its corner, dusty and neglected looking in the afternoon light. Alessandro approached it reverently, running his fingers lightly over the closed lid. A Bechstein, probably from the 1930s, may I? Sister Cecilia nodded, and he opened the lid, revealing the keys. He pressed one note, wincing slightly at the out-of-tune sound. When was it last tuned? He asked. Not in my memory, Sister Cecilia admitted. Alessandro sat down on the bench and played a quick scale. Despite the out-of-tune notes, his fingers moved with practiced ease. It has good bones. It could be beautiful again with proper care. He looked up at her. And you say it's being removed? For renovations. The convent needs repairs badly, and this room will become a meeting space. Alessandro frowned. That seems a shame. Even an imperfect instrument has value. The bishop believes music is a distraction from prayer, Sister Cecilia said, repeating Mother Superior's words without inflection. Alessandro's eyebrows shot up. With respect to the bishop, that's nonsense. Some of the greatest sacred music in history was written to bring people closer to God. Bach said that the aim of all music should be the glory of God and the refreshment of the soul. Sister Cecilia smiled despite herself. I've always thought the same. Their conversation was interrupted by Sister Teresa, who appeared at the door with wide eyes. Sister Cecilia, Mother Superior, is looking for you both. The bishop has arrived early for his inspection. Alessandro quickly closed the piano lid and stood up. I didn't mean to get you in trouble, sister. You haven't, Sister Cecilia assured him, though she wasn't entirely certain that was true. They followed Sister Teresa to the front hall, where Mother Superior stood with Bishop Fontana, a tall, thin man with a perpetual expression of mild disapproval. Mother Superior's tight smile suggested she was not pleased about the surprise visit. Ah, there you are, she said, her voice overly bright. Bishop, you remember Sister Cecilia, our longest-serving member. And this is Mr. Alessandro Romano, the photographer I mentioned who's documenting historic religious buildings. The bishop nodded curtly. I approved your visit for next week, Mr. Romano. Alessandro smiled easily. My schedule opened up unexpectedly, and I didn't want to miss the afternoon light. It's quite spectacular through your stained glass windows. I hope it's not an inconvenience. The bishop seemed mollified by the compliment. Very well, but please remember this is a place of worship, not a tourist attraction. Of course, Your Excellency. I treat all sacred spaces with the utmost respect. The bishop turned to Mother Superior. I'd like to review the renovation plans now if you're ready. Certainly. My office is prepared. She glanced at Sister Cecilia. Perhaps you could show Mr. Romano to the guest quarters. He's welcome to stay for dinner before returning to town. Sister Cecilia nodded, grateful for the escape from what promised to be a tense meeting. She led Alessandro to the small guest house adjacent to the main building, a simple 2-room structure used for visiting clergy or relatives of the nuns. "I apologize for the bishop's manner," she said as she showed him the modest accommodations. "He means well but can be rigid in his views." Alessandro set down his camera bag. "No need to apologize. I've worked with many church officials over the years. Some see art as a pathway to the divine, others see it as a distraction. It's an ancient disagreement." Sister Cecilia smiled. "Well put." She moved toward the door. "Dinner is at 6 in the main dining hall. Simple fare, but Sister Lucia is an excellent cook." "Sister Cecilia," Alessandro said before she could leave. "That piano, it deserves to be played one last time before it goes. Would you consider playing it?" She shook her head immediately. "My hands won't cooperate anymore. The arthritis, you see." "I understand pain," he said quietly. "I had to stop performing after a car accident damaged nerves in my left hand. That's why I turned to photography. But sometimes, for the right piece, I still play through the pain." Sister Cecilia looked down at her twisted fingers. "It's been too long. I wouldn't know where to begin." "Music never leaves us," Alessandro said. "It just waits patiently to be remembered." After dinner that evening, Alessandro charmed the entire convent with stories of his travels. Cathedrals. In France, monasteries in Spain, a tiny church built into a cliff in Greece. Even Mother Superior seemed to warm to him, especially when he praised the convent's historical significance and promised to highlight it beautifully in his documentary. The bishop had returned to the diocese after his inspection, apparently satisfied with the renovation plans. Sister Cecilia noticed that Mother Superior seemed relieved by his departure, her shoulders relaxing visibly as the evening progressed. Later, as the nuns prepared for evening prayers, Sister Cecilia escorted Alessandro back to the guest house. "Thank you for your hospitality," he said. "I'll finish my photographs tomorrow and be out of your way." "You're not in our way," Sister Cecilia assured him. "It's been refreshing to have a visitor with your perspective." Alessandro hesitated, then spoke softly. "I meant what I said about the piano. If you change your mind, I'd be honored to hear you play, even just a single piece." Sister Cecilia shook her head. "Good night, Mr. Romano." But as she walked back to her small room, his words echoed in her mind. "Music never leaves us. It just waits patiently to be remembered." That night, she dreamed of playing for the first time in years. Not of pain or stiffness, but of her fingers flying over the keys as they once had, bringing forth sounds that spoke what words could never say. And somewhere in the guest house, Alessandro Romano lay awake, thinking of the elderly nun with pianist's hands and the knowledge of music in her eyes, wondering about the story behind her silence. Night settled over St. Maria's convent like a soft blanket, bringing with it a deep silence broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the whisper of wind through olive trees. Most of the nuns were asleep by 10, their daily rhythm governed by the ancient pattern of prayer and work that had structured monastic life for centuries. But Sister Cecilia couldn't sleep. Alessandro's words kept circling in her mind. "Music never leaves us. It just waits patiently to be remembered." She tossed in her narrow bed, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin despite the warm summer night. Her hands ached more than usual, perhaps from the dusting she'd done in the library, or perhaps from the memories that had been stirred up. Memories of music, of melodies that once flowed from her fingers like water. Finally giving up on sleep, Sister Cecilia lit the small lamp beside her bed and reached for her prayer book. But even the familiar words failed to soothe her restless spirit tonight. With a sigh, she put on her slippers and a shawl over her nightgown and quietly opened her door. The corridor was dark, lit only by small safety lights near the floor. Sister Cecilia moved slowly, careful not to wake anyone. She wasn't breaking any rules exactly. There was no curfew for the nuns. But midnight wanderings weren't exactly encouraged either. Her feet seemed to know where they were taking her before her mind did. Not to the common room with its piano. That would be too risky with a visitor in the convent. Instead, she found herself heading to the chapel, drawn to its peaceful stillness. The chapel was dark except for the eternal flame that burned near the altar, casting a warm glow that barely reached the wooden pews. Sister Cecilia slipped into a seat in the back row and closed her eyes, letting the familiar smells of candle wax and old wood wash over her. Almost without conscious thought, her fingers began to move on the smooth wooden armrest, playing an invisible piano, Chopin's Nocturne No. 20 in C-sharp minor, a piece she had loved since childhood. Her fingers remembered every note, every subtle change in tempo, though they couldn't produce the actual sounds. I thought I might find someone else who couldn't sleep. Sister Cecilia's eyes flew open. Alessandro stood in the doorway of the chapel, a respectful distance away. He was dressed casually in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, his camera nowhere in sight. "I'm sorry if I startled you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper in the sacred space. "I saw the light of your lamp moving down the hallway." Sister Cecilia's heart was racing, though whether from being surprised or being caught in her private moment of remembrance, she wasn't sure. "I often come here when sleep eludes me," she said, finding her voice. "The chapel is peaceful at night." Alessandro nodded, still standing in the doorway as if waiting for permission to enter further. "May I join you? Or would you prefer to be alone?" Sister Cecilia hesitated, then gestured to the pew across the aisle. "Please, just keep your voice down. Sound carries in here." Alessandro moved quietly to sit where she had indicated. For a few minutes they sat in companionable silence, the kind that exists between people who share an understanding that goes beyond words. "You were playing," he said finally, nodding toward her hands which were now folded in her lap. "I could see your fingers moving." Sister Cecilia felt her cheeks warm slightly. "An old habit. Sometimes my hands remember what my mind tries to forget." "Chopin?" Alessandro guessed. She looked at him in surprise. "How did you know?" He smiled. "The rhythm, the way your left hand was making those gentle, rocking motions. Nocturne No. 20? Sister Cecilia nodded, impressed despite herself. "It was the last piece I performed publicly, before I came here." Alessandro's eyes reflected the gentle flame from the altar. "Will you tell me about it? About why you chose this life instead of music?" No one had asked her that question in decades. Most people at the convent simply accepted that she had always been Sister Cecilia, as if her life before taking vows didn't exist. "It wasn't instead of," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "It was a different kind of music I was called to play." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I was 17 when I gave my last recital. People said I had a promising future. There was talk of scholarships, of studying in Vienna or Paris." Her eyes grew distant with memory. "But that same year, my mother became very ill. Cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months." Alessandro listened intently, his face showing genuine interest rather than mere politeness. "We had no money for proper care," Sister Cecilia continued. "A local convent took her in, cared for her until the end. The sisters there showed such compassion, such grace in the face of suffering. They made her last months peaceful." She looked down at her hands. "She died holding my hand while I hummed her favorite lullaby. It was the most profound moment of my life, being there as her soul left this world." "I'm sorry for your loss," Alessandro said quietly. "It was a long time ago," Sister Cecilia replied. "But afterward nothing felt the same. Playing concert halls, receiving applause, it suddenly seemed hollow compared to what I'd witnessed. So I came here, to this convent, to learn how to give others the same comfort those sisters had given my mother." "And did you find what you were looking for?" Sister Cecilia smiled gently. "Yes, though I missed music terribly at first. When that piano was donated years later, I thought perhaps I could have both worlds. But by then, my duties kept me busy, and eventually my hands." She flexed her stiff fingers. "Well, time takes what it takes." Alessandro was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. What if you could play one more time, before the piano goes? Sister Cecilia shook her head. My arthritis. Just once, Alessandro pressed gently. One piece, for yourself if for no one else, a proper goodbye. I don't know if I can anymore, she admitted. It's been so long. Alessandro leaned forward slightly. Would you be willing to try? Tonight when everyone's asleep? I could help you, and no one would have to know. Sister Cecilia stared at him, torn between longing and fear. Why is this so important to you? Alessandro looked down at his own hands, then back at her. Because after my accident, I thought I'd never play again. The nerves in my left hand were damaged. I couldn't feel the keys properly. For 2 years, I didn't touch a piano. He flexed his fingers. Then one night, like you, I couldn't sleep. I found myself at my piano and I just played. Through the pain, through the mistakes. It wasn't perfect, but it saved something in me that was dying. His sincerity touched something deep within Sister Cecilia. She thought of the piano soon to be gone, of her hands growing stiffer each year, of time running out like sand in an hourglass. One piece, she said finally. Just one. Alessandro's face lit up with a smile. When? Sister Cecilia glanced at the old clock on the chapel wall. It was just past midnight. Now, I suppose, while everyone's asleep. But we'll need to be very quiet. They made their way carefully through the darkened convent to the common room. Sister Cecilia's heart was pounding so hard she feared it might wake the others. This felt daring, almost rebellious, not something she was accustomed to feeling at 78. The common room was bathed in moonlight streaming through the tall windows. The piano sat in its corner, a dark silhouette against the pale wall. Sister Cecilia approached it slowly, as one might approach an old friend after a long estrangement. Alessandro moved a chair close to the piano bench. If we prop the lid with this book, he said, picking up a thick volume from a nearby shelf, and keep it partially closed, it will muffle the sound a bit. Sister Cecilia nodded, watching as he prepared the piano. Then, with a deep breath, she sat down on the bench. The familiar feeling of the seat beneath her brought back a rush of memories so powerful she nearly gasped. Take your time, Alessandro said softly, sitting in the chair beside her. Just feel the keys first. Sister Cecilia placed her gnarled hands on the ivory, not pressing down, just resting them there. The keys felt cool under her fingertips. Familiar yet strange after so long. What will you play? Alessandro asked. Chopin, she replied without hesitation. The Nocturne, he nodded, understanding. Begin whenever you're ready. Sister Cecilia closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing heart. Then slowly she pressed down on the first key. The note rang out, slightly flat from years without tuning, but clear in the night stillness. She winced, worried it might be too loud, but Alessandro gave her an encouraging nod. She played the next note and the next. Her fingers were stiff and uncooperative at first, missing keys and struggling with the once familiar patterns. Pain shot through her joints with every press, but she pushed through it, just as Alessandro had said he'd done. Gradually, something remarkable began to happen. Her hands started to remember. The muscle memory buried deep within them awakened, guiding her fingers to the right keys. The melody emerged, halting at first, then flowing more smoothly. Alessandro watched in wonder as Sister Cecilia's face transformed. The worry lines smoothed out, replaced by an expression of pure concentration and increasingly joy. Her body swayed gently with the music, and despite her arthritic hands, the emotion of the piece came through. The longing, the bittersweet beauty that Chopin had woven into every note. It wasn't perfect. There were missed notes, passages where her fingers simply couldn't move as quickly as the music demanded, but it was honest and deeply felt. Each note played with the weight of decades of living and loving and loss behind it. Alessandro had taken out his phone when she began playing and was holding it discreetly, recording the performance. He hadn't asked permission, perhaps knowing she would refuse, but something told him this moment shouldn't be lost. As Sister Cecilia played the final notes, letting them hang in the air like a whispered prayer, tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. She sat motionless for a moment, hands still resting on the keys, unwilling to break the spell. That was beautiful, Alessandro said softly when she finally looked up. Sister Cecilia wiped her tears with a trembling hand. It was full of mistakes. No, Alessandro shook his head firmly. It was full of life. Technical perfection isn't what makes music touch the soul. It's what the musician brings to it, their experience, their heart. And yours? He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Yours has both suffered and loved deeply. I could hear it in every note. Sister Cecilia carefully closed the piano lid, running her hand over the wood one last time. Thank you, she said simply, for giving me this gift. The gift was mine, Alessandro replied. To witness such music. They made their way back through the silent convent, neither speaking until they reached the point where their paths would separate. Sister Cecilia to her room, Alessandro to the guest house. Good night, Sister Cecilia, Alessandro said. Sleep well. Good night, Mr. Romano, she replied with a small smile. I think I will now. Back in her room, Sister Cecilia's hands throbbed with pain, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. As she slipped into bed, she realized she was humming the nocturne softly to herself. In the guest house, Alessandro Romano looked at the video he had recorded. The quality wasn't professional, just a simple phone recording in low light, but the power of what he had witnessed came through clearly. Sister Cecilia's face as she played, transformed by music, her gnarled hands moving across the keys with a grace that defied their limitations. He hesitated only briefly before uploading the video to his social media accounts with a simple caption. Music never leaves us. It just waits patiently to be remembered. Then he turned off his phone, unaware that across the world, people were already beginning to watch and share, and be moved by what they saw. Alessandro woke to the insistent buzzing of his phone. Sunlight streamed through the small window of the guest house, suggesting he had slept later than usual. He rubbed his eyes and reached for his phone, expecting perhaps a message from his editor about the documentary project. Instead, he found hundreds of notifications flooding his screen, thousands of likes, shares, and comments on the video he had posted just a few hours earlier, dozens of missed calls and messages from news outlets, music blogs, and fellow musicians. My God, he whispered, sitting up straight in bed. The video of Sister Cecilia playing Chopin in the moonlit common room had gone viral overnight. Comments poured in from around the world. This brought me to tears. The emotion in her playing is incredible. Who is this amazing nun? Her story needs to be told. I've never heard this piece played with such depth of feeling. Alessandro scrolled through the notifications in disbelief. The video had already been viewed over 2 million times and was being shared by major news outlets and celebrity musicians alike. What had he done? A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He quickly pulled on a shirt and opened it to find Sister Teresa, the young nun who had been watching him curiously since his arrival. Good morning, Mr. Romano, she said brightly. Mother Superior asked me to tell you breakfast is being served if you'd like to join us. Thank you, sister. I'll be there shortly. Alessandro tried to keep his voice calm, though his mind was racing. Should he tell Sister Cecilia what was happening? Would she be angry that he had shared her private moment with the world? He hadn't asked her permission, a serious lapse in judgment that now weighed heavily on him. But the beauty of her playing, the story it told without words, he had wanted others to witness it too. As Alessandro entered the dining hall, the nuns were already seated, saying their morning blessing. He waited respectfully at the doorway until they finished, then took the empty seat that had been saved for him beside Sister Maria. He noticed Sister Cecilia across the table, looking tired but somehow lighter than she had the day before, as if playing the piano had lifted a burden from her shoulders. Mother Superior nodded to him politely. I trust you slept well, Mr. Romano? Very well, thank you, he replied, accepting a bowl of porridge from Sister Lucia. He avoided looking directly at Sister Cecilia, afraid his face might reveal what had happened overnight. Breakfast proceeded normally, with quiet conversation about the day's tasks and the approaching renovations. No one in this peaceful, isolated place had any idea that outside their walls, Sister Cecilia's midnight performance was captivating the world. After the meal, Alessandro approached Mother Superior. I wonder if I might use the convent's internet connection. I need to check in with my editor. Of course. Sister Maria can show you to the office where we have a computer and connection. Alessandro thanked her and followed Sister Maria to a small room with an old desktop computer. Once alone, he checked his email, finding dozens of interview requests and messages from his agent, who was both thrilled and bewildered by the sudden attention. One email in particular caught his eye, from Giulia Rossini, a respected music critic for an international classical music magazine. This video is extraordinary. The emotional honesty in her playing transcends the technical imperfections. I must know more about this pianist turned nun. Her story could inspire so many. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Alessandro closed the email with a heavy sigh. He needed to tell Sister Cecilia what was happening before she found out some other way. But how? His opportunity came later that morning. He found Sister Cecilia in the garden, carefully tending to a row of lavender plants despite her arthritic hands. The morning sun illuminated her face, highlighting the web of wrinkles earned through decades of living. "May I join you?" he asked. She looked up and smiled. Of course. Alessandro knelt beside her on the garden path, pretending to help with the weeding while gathering his courage. "I need to tell you something," he finally said. Sister Cecilia continued her careful work with the plants. "You sound very serious, Mr. Romano." "I am." He took a deep breath. "Last night when you played the piano, I recorded it on my phone." Her hands paused, but she didn't look up. "And I shared the recording online," he continued, his words coming faster now. "I didn't use your name or the convent's, just the video and a simple caption. I should have asked your permission first, and I'm truly sorry that I didn't." Sister Cecilia was very still, her face unreadable. "I see," she said quietly. "There's more," Alessandro said, knowing he needed to tell her everything. "The video has gone viral. That means many people are watching it and sharing it. Millions, actually. People all over the world are moved by your playing." Now Sister Cecilia did look up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Millions? That can't be possible." "It is. The world is responding to the beauty and emotion in your music. Music critics, professional pianists, ordinary people, they're all touched by what they heard." Sister Cecilia's hands trembled slightly as she returned to her gardening, seemingly needing the familiar task to ground her while absorbing this news. "Are you angry?" Alessandro asked after a long silence. She didn't answer immediately, carefully considering the question. "I don't know what I feel," she finally said. "Surprised, certainly. Perhaps a bit exposed." She looked up at the ancient walls of the convent. "I've lived a quiet life by choice, Mr. Romano. Privacy has been a precious thing to me." "I can take the video down," Alessandro offered immediately. Sister Cecilia shook her head slowly. "What's done is done, and perhaps—" She paused, a hint of wonder creeping into her voice. "Perhaps there was a reason our paths crossed. If my playing has touched others, given them some comfort or joy—" Her voice trailed off, and she seemed lost in thought. Their conversation was interrupted by Sister Teresa, who came running down the garden path, her face flushed with excitement. "Sister Cecilia," she called out. "You must come quickly. Mother Superior needs you in her office right away." Sister Cecilia rose slowly, brushing soil from her hands. "What's happened?" "The phone has been ringing all morning. Journalists, television people, they're all asking about the piano nun. Someone even called from Rome, from the Vatican newspaper." Sister Cecilia's face paled. She looked at Alessandro with a mixture of shock and something close to accusation. "I'm sorry," he said again, helplessly. "I never expected it to spread so quickly." Together they followed Sister Teresa to the main building, where they found unusual activity disrupting the convent's normal calm. Sisters hurried through the corridors, whispering to each other with wide eyes. The ancient phone in the office rang continuously. Mother Superior stood in the doorway of her office, her face tight with concern. When she saw Sister Cecilia approaching with Alessandro, her expression hardened. "Sister Cecilia," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "would you please explain why our convent is suddenly the focus of international media attention?" Before Sister Cecilia could answer, the main door of the convent burst open, and Bishop Fontana strode in, his face flushed with anger. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, holding up his tablet, which showed the video of Sister Cecilia playing the piano. "I've had calls from the diocese all morning. This was taken inside the convent without permission." Mother Superior looked from the bishop to Sister Cecilia to Alessandro, clearly trying to piece together what had happened. "It's my fault," Alessandro said quickly, stepping forward. I recorded Sister Cecilia playing last night and shared the video without her knowledge or consent. She is completely blameless. The bishop's angry gaze fixed on him. You had no right. This is a sacred space, not a concert hall. With respect, Your Excellency, Alessandro replied calmly. Music can be a form of prayer too, especially when played with such devotion. Regardless, this has created a spectacle that disrupts the peace and purpose of this convent, the bishop insisted. The video must be removed immediately. I think we should discuss this privately, Mother Superior interjected, gesturing toward her office. Bishop, Mr. Romano, please. Sister Cecilia, you too. As they entered the small office, Sister Cecilia seemed to shrink into herself, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. This quiet woman who had lived in the shadows of the convent for 60 years was suddenly at the center of a storm. Mother Superior closed the door and turned to face them. Now calmly, please explain what happened. Alessandro recounted the midnight encounter in the chapel, the conversation about music and faith, and Sister Cecilia's agreement to play one last time before the piano was removed. He took full responsibility for recording and sharing the video without permission. The bishop listened with growing impatience. This is precisely why music is a distraction from true devotion. Look at the chaos it has caused. May I see it? Sister Cecilia asked suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. The video, she clarified. I haven't seen what everyone is talking about. Mother Superior hesitated, then handed her tablet to Sister Cecilia. It's already loaded. Sister Cecilia watched in silence as her own image appeared on the screen, her elderly figure seated at the piano in the moonlit room, her gnarled hands moving across the keys with surprising grace. The Chopin Nocturne played softly from the tablet's speakers, filling the small office with its haunting beauty. As she watched, Sister Cecilia's expression changed from apprehension to wonder. Seeing herself from the outside, she could finally understand what Alessandro had tried to tell her, that despite the technical imperfections, there was something in her playing that transcended mere notes. It was a lifetime of faith and devotion translated into music. When the video ended, the room was silent. Sister Cecilia handed the tablet back to Mother Superior, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I apologize for any disruption I've caused, she said softly. It was never my intention to draw attention to myself or to the convent. The bishop began to speak, but Mother Superior raised her hand, silencing him with a gesture that surprised everyone, including herself. Sister Cecilia has served God faithfully in this convent for 60 years, she said firmly. If, in the twilight of her life, her gift for music has found a way to touch others, perhaps we should consider whether this is not, in its own way, a form of ministry. The bishop's eyebrows shot up. Are you suggesting we endorse this? This performance? Mother Superior looked thoughtful. I'm suggesting we pray for guidance before making hasty decisions. In the meantime, Mr. Romano, I think it would be best if you didn't share any more recordings without explicit permission. Alessandro nodded quickly. Of course, and I truly am sorry for any trouble I've caused. As they left the office, Sister Cecilia found herself surrounded by the other nuns, all buzzing with questions and excitement. Is it true you were a concert pianist? Why didn't you ever tell us? Can we hear you play too? Sister Teresa pushed through the crowd to reach her. Sister Cecilia, you won't believe this. Someone from a famous concert hall in Milan called. They want you to play there in public. Sister Cecilia looked overwhelmed by the attention, but there was something else in her expression too. A spark that had been dormant for decades, now flickering back to life. Alessandro watched from a distance, feeling guilty about the chaos he had unleashed, but also seeing how the shell around Sister Cecilia was cracking, revealing the passionate musician who had been hidden inside the dutiful nun for so long. Outside the convent walls, the world continued to discover and be moved by the piano nun. Music critics wrote about the rare emotional authenticity in her playing. Professional pianists praised the depth of interpretation that transcended the physical limitations of her aged hands. Ordinary people shared how the video had moved them to tears, reconnected them with neglected passions, or inspired them to look differently at the elderly people in their lives. And in the midst of it all, Sister Cecilia stood at a crossroads she never expected to face. Between the quiet life she had chosen and the unexpected call of her first vocation, music which had found its way back to her through a chance encounter, and the power of technology she barely understood. That evening, as Sister Cecilia knelt in prayer in the chapel, she asked for guidance with a heart both troubled and strangely lightened. For the first time in many years, she felt fully alive, seen not just as an elderly nun nearing the end of her journey, but as a complete person with gifts still to offer the world. 3 weeks had passed since the video of Sister Cecilia playing the piano had captured the world's attention. The peaceful rhythm of St. Maria's convent had been thoroughly disrupted, with the ancient phone ringing constantly and mail arriving by the bagful. Mother Superior had finally resorted to posting a sign at the entrance: "No visitors without appointment." Sister Cecilia sat in the garden, her favorite lavender plants in full bloom around her. The morning sun warmed her arthritic hands as she carefully sorted through the latest batch of letters that had arrived for her. So many people had written: young piano students inspired by her story, elderly people who had rediscovered forgotten passions after watching her play, parents who had shown the video to their children as a lesson in perseverance. "More fan mail?" Sister Teresa asked, bringing a cup of tea and sitting beside her on the stone bench. Sister Cecilia smiled at the young nun's teasing tone. "Letters from people who were touched by the music," she corrected gently. "Though I still don't quite understand why." "Because it was beautiful," Sister Teresa said simply. "And because you show that age and difficulty don't have to stop someone from doing what they love." Sister Cecilia looked down at her hands. The truth was more complicated than that. The video had gone viral not just because of her age or the unexpectedness of a nun playing classical piano, but because there had been genuine artistry in her playing, the kind that comes from living fully, from experiencing joy and pain and carrying it all in one's heart. Alessandro had been right about that. Speaking of Alessandro, he had departed the day after the video went viral, apologizing profusely for the chaos he had unleashed, but also promising to help however he could. He had left his contact information with Mother Superior and had been calling regularly to update them on the continuing response to the video. Sister Cecilia had forgiven him almost immediately. How could she not when his impulsive action had reawakened something in her that she had thought was lost forever? "Have you decided?" Sister Teresa asked, interrupting her thoughts. "About Milan?" "Ah yes, Milan." La Scala, one of the most famous concert halls in the world, had formally invited Sister Cecilia to play a single piece during an upcoming charity concert. The invitation had arrived on elegant stationery, addressed to Sister Cecilia Martinez, the piano nun. "I'm still praying about it," Sister Cecilia replied. In truth, she was torn. Part of her, the part that had been Lucia the pianist before she became Sister Cecilia the nun, thrilled at the thought of playing in such a venerable venue. But another part feared it would be seen as vanity, as putting herself above her vows of humility and service. "Mother Superior said she would support whatever decision you make," Sister Teresa reminded her. That had been a surprise. After the initial shock had worn off, Mother Superior had shown unexpected flexibility. "God works in mysterious ways," she had said during a private conversation with Sister Cecilia. "Perhaps this is his plan for you in your final years, to share your gift more widely." Even the bishop had softened his stance somewhat, especially after the Vatican newspaper had published a thoughtful piece about the relationship between faith and art, using Sister Cecilia's story as its centerpiece. Sister Cecilia was about to respond when she spotted Mother Superior walking toward them, holding a cordless phone. "It's Mr. Romano again," she said, handing the phone to Sister Cecilia. "He says it's important." Sister Cecilia took the phone, still not entirely comfortable with the technology. "Hello, Alessandro." "Sister Cecilia." Alessandro's voice came through clearly, his excitement palpable even over the phone. "I have news that might help you make your decision about Milan." "What news?" she asked cautiously. "I've been talking with the organizers. They've agreed that all proceeds from the concert can be directed to a charity of your choosing. You would have complete control over where the money goes." Sister Cecilia sat up straighter, her mind suddenly racing with possibilities. "Any charity?" "Absolutely any," Alessandro confirmed. "And based on ticket sales already, they're nearly sold out. We're talking about a substantial amount." Sister Cecilia was quiet for a moment, considering. Then a memory surfaced, of herself as a young girl in her village, longing to learn piano but with parents who could barely afford food, let alone music lessons. Of the kind parish priest who had arranged for her to use the church piano and found a retired music teacher willing to give her free lessons. "What if," she said slowly, "the money went to provide music education for children who couldn't otherwise afford it?" "That would be perfect," Alessandro replied warmly. "In fact, I have contacts at several conservatories who already run outreach programs for underprivileged communities. They could help establish something more permanent with this funding." Sister Cecilia felt a sense of rightness settle over her, as if puzzle pieces were falling into place. "Then I think I will accept the invitation." When she hung up the phone, both Mother Superior and Sister Teresa were watching her with curious expressions. "I'm going to play in Milan," Sister Cecilia announced, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice, "but not for fame or recognition. The proceeds will establish music schools for children in need." Mother Superior nodded approvingly. "A way to share your gift while serving others. Very fitting, Sister Cecilia." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Sister Cecilia spent hours each day at the piano, which had been hastily removed from the renovation plans and professionally tuned for the first time in decades. Her arthritic hands protested, but she found that with gentle stretching exercises suggested by a physiotherapist, who had reached out after seeing the video, she could manage one piece without too much pain. She chose Chopin's Nocturne No. 20 again, the piece from the video, the last piece she had performed as a girl, the piece that seemed to connect her past and present in a perfect circle. Alessandro visited regularly, helping with arrangements and bringing updates from the outside world, where interest in the piano nun showed no signs of fading. He also brought a documentary filmmaker friend who, with Mother Superior's careful supervision, recorded Sister Cecilia's story and her preparations for the concert. The resulting short film would later win awards and bring even more attention to the music education initiative. On the day of the concert, Sister Cecilia traveled to Milan with Mother Superior and Sister Teresa. It was the first time she had left the convent in years. The busy streets and crowded buildings of the city overwhelmed her at first. But as their car approached the magnificent La Scala, a strange calm settled over her. Backstage, she was given a small dressing room, where she sat in her simple black habit. She had insisted on wearing it rather than concert attire, and said a quiet prayer before going on stage. The concert hall was massive, every seat filled. As Sister Cecilia was introduced and made her way slowly to the grand piano at center stage, a hush fell over the audience. She felt thousands of eyes on her, but rather than making her nervous, it filled her with a sense of purpose. These people had come not just to hear music, but to witness something they believed was meaningful, a testament to passion that transcends age and circumstance. Sister Cecilia sat at the piano, adjusted her position slightly, and placed her gnarled hands on the keys. She closed her eyes briefly, offering up this moment as a form of prayer, then began to play. The sound that filled La Scala was imperfect but profound. Every note carried the weight of her life's journey. The young girl who had loved music, the woman who had chosen faith, the elderly nun who had found a way to bring these two devotions together. The audience sat spellbound, many with tears streaming down their faces as the final notes faded away. The applause that followed was thunderous. Sister Cecilia stood shakily, overwhelmed by the response, and bowed her head in humble acknowledgement. As she left the stage, she knew without a doubt that she had made the right decision. That single performance marked the beginning, rather than the end, of Sister Cecilia's unexpected final chapter. The Music Education Initiative, officially named Sister Cecilia's Symphony, received donations from around the world. Within a year, it had established programs in 3 continents, providing instruments, lessons, and performance opportunities to children who would otherwise never have experienced the joy of making music. Sister Cecilia herself became a reluctant ambassador for the project. At 80, she recorded an album of sacred music that topped classical charts and brought attention to composers whose works had been largely forgotten. The album's proceeds funded even more music schools. Back at St. Maria's Convent, where renovations had been completed, with the piano remaining firmly in its place, Sister Cecilia began teaching local children twice a week. The convent's common room, once quiet and rarely used, now rang with the sound of small hands learning scales and simple melodies. "You found a new kind of ministry," Mother Superior observed one afternoon, watching as Sister Cecilia gently corrected a young boy's hand position on the keyboard. "Not new," Sister Cecilia replied with a smile, "just a different way of serving. Music and faith, they come from the same place in the heart." On her 85th birthday, Sister Cecilia received a special letter from the Pope himself, praising her contributions to both sacred music and children's education. She read it aloud to the other nuns at dinner, her voice steady despite her emotion. "Did you ever imagine your life would take this turn?" Sister Teresa asked her later, as they walked slowly in the garden under a sky filled with stars. Sister Cecilia looked up at the heavens, thinking of all the twists and turns her long life had taken. "No," she admitted. "But that's the beauty of faith, isn't it? We make our plans, we choose our paths, but God always has surprises in store for us." She paused by her beloved lavender plants, their scent sweet in the evening air. "I thought my music was finished when I came here 65 years ago. Then I thought it was finished when arthritis twisted my hands. I was wrong both times." Sister Teresa nodded thoughtfully. "Your music found a way." "It found its true purpose," Sister Cecilia corrected gently. "To serve others, to bring beauty into the world, to remind people the